Hi, guys. Welcome to the Black Man Spotlight. Thank you so much for tuning in with me. First and foremost, please hit that subscribe button for me because that is how I'm going to grow. It's how I'm going to be able to keep doing this with my team, and it's how I'm going to monetize. So if you care about me, you will subscribe right now. So let's get into this episode. Where today, the spotlight is you. I am sitting here with Taz, the creator of Black Men Heal, who is also a psychotherapist. And I got the pleasure of meeting her a couple months ago when we were going to work on a project together. So I had to bring her along to talk to you guys because the information that she has, the resources that she has, the love that she has for Black men is something that I wanted to share with you guys. So Taz, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
So one of the things I've learned a lot from working with men in therapy is that part of their process after they, have to get comfortable is what I call the process of naming. Like they have to learn how to name what it is they're experiencing because just being able to name it actually helps the brain make sense of it. And by being able to name it, you can also then have like a blueprint of, oh, okay, so this is that. So now I can help you more because it's like, oh, okay, yes, I'm feeling depressed, right? Like being able to name that, it's like, okay, so depression looks like this. So those things that you're describing that you're experiencing when you feel like there's just something wrong with you, it's common. And that is a symptom of this thing. Like if you had a cold and you had a stuffy nose, you wouldn't be like, oh, there's something wrong with me. You'd be like, I have a cold. But it allows you to know how to go and treat the cold because it's actually treatable. So the process of naming is something in therapy that I think is so powerful for men. And once you can name your experiences and your emotions are actually messengers. That if you're not in touch with your emotions, and I think a lot of men have not had a lot of space to be in touch with them and cultivate them and name them and express them. But if your emotions are giving you messages, right? If you can name it, like through the message is how you identify the need. Because if you can't hear the message, which your feelings is trying to tell you hey, this is what's going on. Hey, this is how I feel. There is so much richness in being able to identify that. And the only way you can know what you need is through being able to know what you feel. And so I would definitely encourage men to, practice more of being able to identify what that is and hopefully that they feel even for yourself. Because if you don't feel safe with your partner or whoever it is you're talking to name it to them yet, that's fine. If they not listen, I say safety needs to be earned. If somebody has not made you feel safe, then no, then they do not get the privilege of your vulnerability. Like people need to earn your vulnerability. But if you can find a safe space and you can name it and learn about who you are from it, I think it's so enriching, it's so powerful. And then it teaches you more of emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence actually helps you in with any of life's strifes, having emotional intelligence of like what to do with all of that pain and all that trauma in your body, it teaches you how to regulate your nervous system. Or like if you can find your way back from despair, that's what emotional intelligence is. Like learning not acting on this one emotion, like being able to like, okay, let me soothe this in my nervous system because all of your healing is the healing process is one that when you can be clear and when you can be regulated and when you don't have to fear what you're feeling, to know that it's okay and that it's normal and that there's a way out of that despair.
Yes, understanding yourself because, okay, man, like who has studied you, Black man? Like who has taken the time and sat you down and made you the center of the conversation, the center of like, we need to know at your core and study everything that you're about, everything that you're feeling, so we can know your formula, so you know how to go out into the world, understand yourself so you can express yourself. And I feel like that's the problem with so many of our intimate relationships is like when you don't understand yourself and then you're trying to mingle with somebody else who's trying to understand you, But then you don't even understand you. And
you don't understand them because they bringing their own stuff. Yeah.
Right. And it's like, it's a bunch of confusion. And then you're associating your emotions and your anger and all of these other things with that other person. And then y'all are both just like kind of beefing. And I totally get that. So is there an example? Do you have an example where a man who didn't understand himself, but then you like kind of facilitated that in therapy to help them understand themselves? And how did that go?
Client who I was working with who was just really depressed. And this is a story that illustrates the importance of that process of naming, right? He was really depressed. He came in and it's like, there's something wrong with me. He's naming all of these, to me as a clinician, symptoms. He's naming all of these symptoms of a bigger diagnosis of depression. A loss of interest in any activities. So for him, I guess I don't want to have sex. A loss of pleasure, like a loss of, I'm not enjoying anything. I'm not enjoying my kids. I'm not having any joy. I don't want to leave the house. I'm not having the motivation to do anything. He's naming all these things and he's like, I mean, I'm not suicidal, but if I was to step outside today and get hit by a truck, I wouldn't be mad. And he was also thinking about like maybe avenging his friend's murder because he was like, maybe then at least I could go to prison. Like either I could go to prison or maybe then I would get killed or whatever. So he's off in all of these things because he's experiencing this depression. And I remember telling him yeah, this is depression. And he was like shocked. He's like, depression? I heard about that before. And I'm like, yeah, it's really common. Like 80% of people at some point in time are gonna experience depression. But the good news is it's so treatable. It's actually, it's incredibly treatable. And here's the plan, and this is what we're gonna do, and this is how you're gonna notice this and that. And he was like, damn, I never thought a nigga like me could have something like that. And but I think it absolved him of this weight of there's something wrong with me that I'm able to name for him. That what you're naming is so common, and it's this, and this is actually really treatable. And I was laughing because I'm like, the next time he came to session, he was like, "Yes, I've been thinking about that depression thing you were telling me, and I think a couple of my niggas might have this too." And it was just hilarious because he was relieved. None of us asked to be sick. Who would ask, right? Mental health is the same way. It's like these things happen, like it's like getting sick. You're going about life and life can be toxic. The environments can be toxic. And mental health is what is happening to the response to those things, right? So it's not your fault that you're depressed or that you're anxious or that you're not okay. That's not your fault. Life is hard, right? So, being able to name that and know that, I think gives them grace for themselves. It allows people to actually see themselves with more compassion. Like, this is not my fault. It's not something I'm doing wrong. I think it's freeing to be able to actually name and be like, okay, all right, now what to do about this?
I feel so bad within myself because as you're naming the symptoms, I'm thinking of people that I know that have those exact symptoms in my family that are kind of like the black sheep, like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, he just doesn't want to do anything. He's just lazy. He's just, you know what I'm saying? No good type of thing. Or family members are kind of chastising them.
Yeah.
Which probably makes things worse. I'm not going to lie. It's exacerbating when the people closest to you are not supportive or not even not supportive, just like don't understand the language or the symptoms or what's going on.
And when it comes to men, especially, men's depression can look different from women's depression. That's important to mention too, because I think when we talk about depression, we think of like women being sad and crying in the bed and eating ice cream with slippers. I think we have like this visual of what it looks like. Or if somebody's sad and they're crying, then okay, and they're saying I'm depressed, maybe. But with men, they may not cry. Men are not socialized to cry. So it might be coming out in anger, withdrawal, more risky behaviors or like withdrawal from the family or irritability, more aggressiveness. So if you think about that, some of the very symptoms of depression that men carry is also what we call toxic masculinity. So think about it. anger, aggression, irritability, withdrawal, men who infidelity, gambling, substance abuse, all of those things that we often, when men are exhibiting those things, the response is not typically warmth and empathy. It's normally like a condemning, like you're toxic, ghosting. Oh my God, that's another huge phenomenon that I've dealt with so much in therapy from women. But yeah, like after I started working with men and realizing, well, why are you ghosting? I'm curious too as a woman, and realizing all the shit that they were dealing with that they couldn't name and that they didn't feel good within themselves. Like all of that was mental health stuff. All mental health stuff. Yeah.
And now we have social media. And we have gangs of women who are, coming on podcasts, and chastising men and embarrassing them and making it known that you ain't shit. N-word, right? Like, you ain't shit, nigga, because you doing this and this and this to me, da 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 da. Even though, like, I started to take accountability, I'm like, yo, if I start to see these patterns in someone, I'm just not going to interact with them in this way. Like, they probably aren't even ready for a relationship if I feel like I'm being lied to or manipulated, and I just like remove myself from the situation. And I started, like, instead of like pointing the finger, I was listening to a podcast earlier, and they said, if you point the finger, wherever you point the finger, that's where your power goes. So you're pointing the finger at the other person, you're giving them power, and then start pointing the finger at you and start holding accountability and space for it. And that has allowed me to have such healthier relationships with Black men, because instead of blaming Black men for like the things that you listed, irritability or, cheating or whatever, I'm just like, yo, like, you're just not going to see me. I could see the signs now. You're just not going to see me in that space with you. And just because we're not in an intimate relationship doesn't mean that I don't still care about you as a human being.
Yes. I'll come back and we can talk about that. But like all of my exes, I am still in great relationship with because I care about them all. They couldn't be what I might have needed or we couldn't do that for each other. But that is so important that, if I say I care about somebody, it doesn't go away because they've disappointed me or because they've harmed me. Like I do, I'm committed to life's work of healing, right? Because I'm not healed, but for the rest of my life, I'll be healing, right? But in that process, it is like, okay, really wanting to understand, like, okay, I get that this person did this to me, right? But they're not a horrible person. Like sometimes people having to accept, Brene Brown says this, so, having to accept that people are really just doing the very best that they can with what they have and what they know. And sometimes they're not, because sometimes people know better and they're not doing better. So that, we can maybe talk
about space for that.
To know the difference, because there's a lot of women out there right now who might be enduring abuse because they're wanting to help, right? But I'm not talking about that because I think it's important for you to know the difference. But knowing that if you need to walk away from something is a very powerful thing to know. And knowing yourself, becoming grounded in yourself. Again, listen to those emotions and those messengers of what is it telling you that you need. Sometimes when people are in chronic depression, I hate to say it, but like, it's like, it keeps coming back up because you're not answering the need. Sometimes the need is, well, because you're in this toxic relationship and this person is, as long as you're in this, I can't even tell you how many times, sometimes people like, it could be a relationship, it could be a toxic job, it can be a something environmentally or something that is in your space that, you keep finding your way back to this depression because the need might be for you to free yourself.
Well, I'm going to say something that a lot of people aren't going to like, but like, I feel like me as a woman, what was happening, why I kept finding myself in those situations for longer than I should have been, is because I was objectifying Black men. And Black men right now are essentially trophies for women and to have in relationship. Like, I'm more powerful if I'm in relationship to him, if I have a ring, if I'm married to him. And so everything that I was staying in was because I was in hopes that if I stayed longer or if I did this different, then I would get the outcome that I would needed to have my trophy. And like, when in actuality, this is a whole human being that's showing these signs and symptoms that they are not ready for a relationship, period. So me staying here, trying to manipulate the situation so he could be ready for a relationship for me was selfish of me.
because it also could be hold. Not only does it sometimes hold you back, but it could be holding another person back. Because sometimes what people might need to do their own growth or their own flourishing or their own changing is to not be enabled by continuing to do the same thing. It is to be free. But yes, I got to come back for us to talk about relationships.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
We do. We go on and on and on. But thank you guys so much for listening. And Taz, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.